Hey everybody, welcome back to Never in Reverse podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Axel. Today we have a very, very special guest, Jeff Panik.
Oftentimes people can learn more from your mistakes than they can your successes. And if you own that, it goes a long way really to help them learn in life. And the amount of spending on credit cards and debt far outweighs anything that you would see spending on talking about savings or literacy. You have to have a foundation that's above anything else, especially if you don't have the support around you. You have to understand that you're going to make mistakes. And even if you do have that, you're going to make mistakes. It's part of life. The biggest thing is to learn from them and not compare yourself to other people.
He is a 25-year veteran. He's an ex-military. He's going to bring his presence in here and just give us a lot of insight on how to give perspective of financial aptitude, retirement, just bring some insight and clarity to ways that you can handle money, look at money, really challenging area in our lives that can make us just that much better.
It's really important to go into retirement understanding what you're going to do, what your values are, what your goals are, and to try to test things out. Or whether it's volunteering, golf or sports or travel, it's really important before you retire really to have a plan in place, not just financially, but what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
Welcome to the show, Jeff Panik. Hey everybody, welcome back to Never in Reverse podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Axel. Today we have a very special guest coming in from Atlanta, also known as Hotlanta. This gentleman is a financial guru, ton of experiences, good and bad. We are so honored to have him join us. So welcome to the show, Jeff Panik. Hey Jeff, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today, Jeremy?
Man, I'm doing awesome. Can you give the guests some just overview of you as a person, your background, who you are?
So I've been advising clients for about 26 years now. Before that, I was in the Army, and really by being in the business for so long, the financial services industry, I've seen, as you mentioned before, good, bad, and ugly, if you will. And so, what I've tried to do, I wrote a few books, really try to help people along, as it relates to financial literacy in life. It can be, there's a lot of twists and turns. And it can be very difficult if you get off on the wrong foot.
Are you born and raised in Atlanta? Kids?
No,
wife, married?
No. So I grew up south of Pittsburgh, kind of in the mountains, coal area, and went to school up there and moved to Atlanta and started working down here about 26 years ago, and married with kids.
That's awesome, man. Well, we appreciate joining us. I think the biggest thing that kind of go through is just the alignment around money, right? Like that's a day-to-day topic that can be friction or frictionless, right? I believe that there's always this element of surprise if you don't honor communication, which is what we're going to go through, is like in all facets, whether it's your career, your job, if you're looking to advance or you feel like you're owed, like that topic in our society is really challenging at times. And I think hopefully you can give some maybe perspective on how to release that control or make a more connected element of how people maintain that relation. It's a relationship, right? And it sits right in the middle.
It is. And, as much as technology has advanced and made it easy, that just talking about money, it's very taboo, especially inside of families. And so, the worst thing that you could do is assume. That's like anything in life, and it's especially true with money. That's especially true with couples. It's probably the number one reason for divorce. And a lot of it could be avoided, but it comes down, as you mentioned before, to communication.
Well, the future's now, and I think it's like putting a stake in the ground. Enough is enough if you're in that spot. Like, I think for viewers, it's like important to just own the space and don't look backwards. I think it's always important to just put a stake in the ground and say, hey man, whatever's happened has happened. Because if you do that, that residual like snowball effect of like just continuing the same habits or thoughts or whatever's controlling your life. So this first topic around the comparison trap, and I live dearly by this, that I do not fall within that. Keeping up with the Joneses is what we call it, right? That comparison trap where, your bad financial decisions are going through the view of what the others might have or might be perceiving to have, right? So to me, man, that is like, I look at society and I'm like, man, I drive down my road and I know 80% of these people are in credit card debt to their top of their head. And they have a nice car, but behind the nice car is a big payment, right? And they're just going, I don't care. I was driving a minivan before and I didn't care. I don't really care. That element of life is comparing yourself to friends and lifestyles. And I know it's so hard in our society because we all want to be loved and fit in, right? And accepted.
Exactly. No one really wants to bring up their mistakes. But if you have children, that's usually the best way to kind of teach them, especially about money. Really talking about, from a standpoint of humility, really talking about some of the errors that you made, because really, oftentimes people can learn more from your mistakes than they can your successes. And if you own that, it goes a long way, really, to try to help them, as well as really to help them learn in life. And I think really it's just a challenge, and I compare it really to almost like a marathon. There's some people that start at mile 7 or 8 because they have mentors, they have parents that are financially literate to try to help them through the process. And then you have the majority of the population, unfortunately, that's just standing at the starting line after the gun is already sounded. And they're at such a disadvantage, and the amount of spending on credit cards and debt, it far outweighs anything that you would see spending on talking about savings or literacy.
So just a comparison thing though, what are some things you can give the viewers, man? Like quit. I don't want to tell people what to do, but we as a country got to quit comparing. Like if you have a dollar, don't spend two.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the one thing that I see. If you look at Facebook, Instagram, all these different sites, TikTok, and these people have 5 or 6 rental properties. Well, the reality is they just didn't wake up one day and get the 5 or 6 rental properties.
Yeah.
You have to have a foundation that's above anything else, especially if you don't have the support around you. It's easy if you have parents, grandparents that are there, helping you learn about money, helping you make good decisions. But if you don't have that, you have to understand that you're going to make mistakes. And even if you do have that, you're going to make mistakes. It's part of life. Really, the biggest thing is to learn from them and not compare yourself to other people, because whether it's retirement or starting out, every single person has a different direction they're going, different needs, different wants, and different goals. And that's the first thing that you have to understand. And unfortunately, with the influencers and a lot of things that we see now, it's all about the shiny object, not looking at really what the long-term consequences are for taking we would say, the easy road.
I'll tell you what, those influencers, one thing for me, man, I got burned by one guy one time. He had a, he was very, very good on, and this is not on my personal side, this is just on business. He knew the masculine side of things, right? That ego that just sits in the background is like, and I thought we were making a good decision. And what I learned is that the gentleman was smoke and mirrors. And that's 90% of it, guys. I think it's important to honor that, is like what you see is not what the reality of that is, because behind that's a person. They got their own set of problems. They, the guy that's showing the Lambos probably renting an apartment.
Yes.
Right. That's typically and to me, that's, we got to be safe. We got to realize that we got to be able to digest that data and go, man, it's all good. I don't know that person. Chances of that being real are what, less than 1%, right? We got to be honest. Like that's the 1%, and not every person on Instagram is the 1%. They all act like they're the 1%, and they give us the perception. And that's what I think that challenge of just, we're more inadequate in our views because of that. I think they just keep filtering these things at us and showing us what we perceive as the 1%, man. It's putting a lot of weight on our society. I feel that at times, but you know what? I set it to the side and I just look at it and go, that chances of that being honest and real are look around me, right? Look at the people. The chances of that being honest and real are, there's few people that are there.
Yeah. And, I think that's, unfortunately, with the technology, with artificial intelligence, all these things right now, you would think it would be easier to get your specific needs met. The problem with that is it intersects other people's needs and wants, and the other people are the people trying to sell you something. So it's really challenging, oftentimes, where people will go down they'll go down a road, but then they'll realize part way down that they're just the person. It's like a smoke and mirror situation, kind of like you mentioned. Maybe a different situation, but what ends up happening is they just shut down. And that's the one thing about money, as you mentioned before, you just can't shut down. You have to face whatever the reality is, because by not facing it, the reality in the future is going to be worse.
Yeah, and I think this comes like the money without a purpose, right? Like I think I know that I can own that I've been in that spot, like really not paying attention, but not really. I think when you get that purpose, but living with that purpose and not having a financial plan, reactive living to situations instead of, hey, I got a bucket over here. That's my safety net, man. That's where I put my my kids' braces. That's where I put the, oh crap, like I got a flat tire. Um, you know, having that purpose around every area, and I think not to control it, but just to create awareness around life. Like things are going to happen. And I always tell my family is like, we're not responsible for the P&L of Amazon and Walmart.
Hmm.
They want me to be,
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's for sure. They will get you coming and going for sure.
and I think just that purpose. What do you sense around purposeful living around like just finances? Like when people make that shift, it's a big one, man. It's like, listen, it's that stake in the ground. Let me live on purpose here. Let me not be reactive. Let me impulse buying around something that's not a direct me to keep me safe and alive, right? Like we all want more, and it's just like this abundance that's sitting in our world, and I gotta assume that when you're stepping in with your clients and just trying to get down to the root of what that looks like to have a purpose in your financial goals, it's important, right, to give the strong base.
There's no question. I think the biggest thing that I see, it's whether people approaching retirement, I compare that to like moving, where
Mhm.
you accumulate all these things, but you have no idea how they work together. And then I also look at someone that's young, they have this, they have all these things coming at them, but how do they make the right decision? And really, the first thing comes down to really inventory and really looking through what you have and then working from there, especially with couples. Constantly I see, we talk, streaming where they have the same subscription. So in some cases I see people that have two of this, they're paying for Netflix or for this, MLB or whatever it is twice, and so I'm like,
Ooh.
maybe if you take that $100 and put it to savings or your emergency fund, those little things, or you go to Starbucks and don't pay $4 or $5, you do that one time less a week and you put that towards savings. The one thing I always say that the benefit of technology is to the ability to automate. The earlier you can automate, the easier you're going to meet your future goals, because you just automate. When I say automate, I mean when your check comes in direct deposit, you have it set up so it goes out to your high yield savings account or a Roth IRA or investment account. If you just set it, you don't forget it, but you set it, you make it automated, you can go a long way in terms of just not having to overthink things.
Yeah, and I think that what you're saying, and I in my family, it's pay yourself first, man. Always. You are first. You are first. Everything else on the outs. And I think what's happened, man, is we've put everything else in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Walmart, Amazon, you know, Honda, all these peripheral things. And then we have all these on the outside, and there's nothing, you're not owning your space and saying, man, I'm going to take care of myself first. I'm going to take care of my kids first. And then whatever's left, and you can, like you said, you can automate that. Like, because going into this, like you said something about retirement, I think there's the retirement crisis, right? I think that a lot of people are struggling in that area. And even if they plan financially, why do you think so many people are struggling, even if they've done the financial planning right, after they retire? Is it just a lack of connectedness? They haven't done, maybe they haven't done a lot of planning around what relational elements and how much depth was there. They're relying on coworkers to fill that, all those things. What do you see typically? Because you're probably seeing a lot of this occurring with the baby boomers right now, is like moving towards that. What do you see in your?
So the one thing I see, and sometimes people are, and it's rightly so focused on whether or not they can be financially comfortable in retirement. The one other thing that I unfortunately see, that they don't really have a good plan for what they're going to do in retirement. And
Mhm.
oftentimes I see people, for the years that I've been working, potentially there's people that will live longer in retirement than the time that they worked. So it's really important to go into retirement understanding what you're going to do. And that the retirement book that I have, the first chapter I dedicate to really what your values are, what your goals are, and to try to test things out. Whether it's going back and learning new things, or whether it's volunteering, or whether it's playing golf or sports or travel, really understanding before you retire what you want to do in retirement. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of people that just retire. They think they're going to spend all this time with their family. Well, guess what? If you didn't spend time with your family while you were working, they may not want to spend time with you. And so
Mhm.
it's really important, before you retire, really to have a plan in place, not just financially, but what you're going to do with the rest of your life.
Yeah, because you're right, man. It's the bucket, right? What are you filling that bucket along the way, or are you just saying, "Hey, at retirement, then I'll be a good dad, or then I'll be a granddad," right? Like, don't wait. Keep that activity alive and fill those buckets. Just like we're filling even if you plan financially, you're filling that bucket. When you're done doing that, that bucket stops, and you got all these things over here that might be missing a bunch of important relational things and psychological connection and groups and the friendships that you should have been. I think that I can imagine that in the corporate world, man, a lot of these people retire, their connections, they put their identity and their connections inside of that workplace, and on the outside, they didn't do a lot of fulfillment, and all of a sudden they retire, that goes away. They have a retirement, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, look at all this." I mean, it's like an empty nester in a house, right? My wife and kids are out right now at my in-laws. It's quiet in my home. I told my wife, I go, "Man, this is weird." I go, "I wasn't ready for it. I haven't planned for that. That will happen." And I told my neighbors, I'm like, "Man, how do you deal with the quietness?"
When
They go,
yeah, it's also about, as a couple really coming back together, almost like it was before you had children and you really focused on work and everything, because you have to come back together, because if you don't, you're going to get lost somewhere along the way. And I see couples where, they're about to retire and they don't really talk about, they see they're okay financially, but they don't talk about where they want to live, what they want to do. And what ends up happening is, one may want to go to the beach, and that's what they think they want to do. The other may want to stay put. So there's just basic conversations that you need to have well before you retire, so that you don't get tripped up, and you're not in a situation where you're sitting there either by yourself because you haven't worked on your relationships, or you just don't have a purpose. And I think for most people, really, retirement, if you're healthy and you've done the right things, I think it's imperative that you find a purpose. And if you can do that, only will you help other people, but you help yourself.
Yeah, and I think the last topic what we're going to dive into is this, and this is important. I think it's kind of going a little bit backwards before retirement. Just the communication, your relationships, and your financial stability, and the communication around that. The importance of communication around finances, right? It's almost like this quiet inside of relationships. It's just we've been taught at a young age as your coworkers, hey, you're not to talk about what you get paid. You're not talking to talk all these things, right? So in our being, it's almost this ranking. I always feel like there's this ranking, and it doesn't need to be like how much do I make, how much do you make? I think it's just if you don't have that openness around, especially in your marriage and tight relationships where that you blend two different views a lot of the times. My marriage was that way, and I think it's opposites always attract, right? I was just talking to my sister about this.
We were talking about
It's
earlier, it's, like invariably with relationships and romance, you find someone that's the opposite of you. That's great for romance and attraction, but it's not good for money.
Yeah, but I don't know what I think I was telling my sister this morning, it's funny that this got brought up, but I told her, I said, "My wife and I truly believe that God sent her into my life to work on I wouldn't call them flaws, but my harsh edges." And same with her, like her weaknesses are strengths to me, but they're also like volatile places that I don't like to give up the control, right? Like, a lot of it has to do with finances, to be open and honest. It's like, I didn't grow up in a very stable environment. So man, I went the opposite to an extreme, and I think it's just learning to finesse those edges, but and have that communication and give up a little bit of control and unite. But I think those money conversations that people avoid they're always there. It's a tough discussion, but I'm not perfect yet with that yet, but we're starting to get more unified on the purpose and like what it's a vehicle, it's a tool. It can do many different things for you. You can take vacations and build memories. You obviously can eat food and enjoy those things together. It can help unite people, but it also has a purpose for proper planning, to reduce stresses, right? So I'm stressed and I can't, I'll tell you what, I have a hard time relating with people when they're super stressed out because they're in a flat tire, right? Like give that simple example. They get a flat tire and it stresses them out. But they got a brand new car, a brand new house,
Yes.
and they're broke.
Yeah. It's, you can find invariably, just because, and even people that have plenty of money doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be happier or they're leading the life
Yeah.
they want to. I mean, that's unfortunately, I think, more of the reality, where so I see people that just wake up one day, they're in an empty house and they don't know why. Even though they have money and they can take care of themselves, certainly it's important to have resources so you can take care of yourself and your family. But if you focus so much on the money, you lose the rest of the relationships. And that's unfortunately more common these days than not. And it's easy to get wrapped up in your phone, your digital presence, and forget about the people around you.
And I can be honest, man, I've been in that spot. This is about 3 years ago, I was there. I was that guy. I'm competitive, I like to win, I wanna be successful, but I was putting everything around me second,
Mhm.
and I'll tell you what, it was everything around me was starting to break down because there was just this exhaustion around me, that I created. I'm gonna own that, and, what I started to realize is that all that control didn't really change me. It didn't change my circumstances. Maybe from a perception, maybe it stabilized things a little bit more, but me as a person, it really didn't do anything for me.
Mhm.
If I made a little bit more money, didn't change me.
Well, there's
If
always
I
there it's that's the thing. It's never it's kind of like one of those things where it's like going upstairs that never end. You just keep
oh,
going, but you never get there. And so, even with couples, I suggest you just do like a 30-minute meeting a month. It doesn't have to be super formal. It's a matter of talking just generally about finances, even about things that may not be financially oriented. Like, I always talk to people about, freezing your credit. Do you have, wills, documents like that? It's important to do some of the basic things that people just don't get around to. But if you talk about it, eventually, you're going to have an accountability partner there that can help you work through some of the things.
and make balance, right? Like, I think you're right. It's, Dan Martell does that with his wife, or so he shows that. I don't know if you know Dan, but he's on all over social media, but he does that with his wife. It's like, they're just gonna have a business meeting for 30 minutes to
Mhm.
discover where they're at, make sure they're on the same page, right? And I think it's probably just a discomfort thing that me personally, I'm working through is like, listen, I'm starting to push towards that because I need to stretch, right? Like, get more okay with not maybe feeling like I don't have complete control.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I think I can see that being, important. One thing, as I say, you said just to keep chasing. I read an article this morning, and a guy goes, I had a buddy of mine, and I was talking to him, and he got a $19 million bonus. That's a lot. Okay. And he's going through the conversation with him. The guy goes, yeah, but there's guys above me getting more, so I need to keep going. So the endless stairs. And I read that and I went, man, that guy, it's not about the
Mhm.
finances anymore. It's something that is that is never gonna go away. And so the other gentleman basically told his wife, I'm done chasing, man. At what point do we stop? Like, how much is enough?
Yeah, and I think unfortunately people get so focused on that they forget about their health. And sometimes people are so focused on money, which it's important to be and make sure you have the necessary resources. You also have to focus on your health because if you don't have your health, you can have all the money in the world and it doesn't matter.
100%. Well, thank you so much. I guess as we wind this episode down, what financial lessons took you the longest to truly understand?
Just the ability to do something, that's the important thing. It may not fix everything, but it's important to do something, whether it's to automate, to put $50 away, start with that and work from there. The earlier that you can do that, the earlier you can get to your goals. The longer you wait, you're just putting it off, and you're going to have less, and there's going to be more anxiety there.
What do people still misunderstand about retirement and success?
They're looking at their neighbor kind of like we talked about before, as opposed to looking at themselves and what makes them happy. And really, with retirement, it's not just about money, it's also about finding a purpose and leaving something, a legacy, more than money oftentimes.
Yeah, exactly. And then what does a living intentionally actually mean? What does it mean to you to actually live intentionally? What have you seen as healthy? Like, you've done this a long time. Like, you've probably starting your career, I'm sure there was like you were part of maybe the process, and then you just grow and evolve and you're like, man, that's not it. I see that guy doing that. Then they probably meet some of your clients where it's like, man, that guy or that couple is like a power couple. Have you found that, like, purpose? Like, what does it mean to live intentionally from doing this for so long?
I think that you really, especially for couples, that you can have an open conversation, and you're just not, you get so focused on what's going on, whether it's in different social circles or at work, that you're just not open and honest. And, again, like I mentioned before, especially for people that have children, best thing is humility, really, to look and say, well, lay out some of the things that went wrong. You don't have to tell them everything, but lay out some of these things and say, you're going to make mistakes, and that's what I'm here for, to try to help you. Because a lot of times the kids get so stressed out, they end up making mistakes, and the mistakes compound because they're afraid and they don't have anyone to talk to.
Well, thank you. Just as we wind down, where can the guests maybe contact you if they or viewers want to maybe reach out to you? Is there a place that they can, Instagram, social media?
My last name's Panik, Panik. So if you Google Jeffrey Panik, my websites come up. I have a personal website, a business website, and then I have a YouTube channel with a lot of helpful videos. Really, what I try to do with people is help them become more financially clear and try to provide content that isn't a bunch of financial jargon, that can try to help you understand topics that are oftentimes overwhelming.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us on today. Viewers, if you guys want just financial insight or help, reach out to Jeff. Until next time, I'm your host, Jeremy Axel. Never in reverse, always moving forward. And thank you so much for joining us.